Good morning with everybody. Welcome to the Pain Point Workshop, scoping more in-depth common challenges and needs of climate services using Earth observation. Today we will have to discuss several challenges. Actually, one challenge, that is the challenge on fire. And I'm going to you're seeing my screen at the moment. I would like to share with you the agenda. We have set some times on the agenda. Probably you received the link. You could see the agenda in the Outlook invite. But even though we had some time slot assigned, we like to have also some flexibility within, the framework of these topics. So first, we will have an introduction to set the context of Protect, the objectives of this workshop, and also the methodology. We will share with you the results of the Pain Point workshops that were taking place in spring, and that led us to these 4 challenges of today. And we're going to share with you also a climate policy perspective on the 4 challenges, and specifically today on the challenge of fire, and also the potential of Earth observation to tackle the needs in this regard. The preliminary state-of-the-art analysis conducted to see what is the maturity of the potential solutions to tackle the challenge. And the most important part of the workshop is going in depth in the challenge, to scoping the needs and perhaps finding more detailed use cases as a result of the presentation that Kees is going to do today. So we will have an open discussion, and then we will present some conclusions and next steps. And okay, let's go then to the first part, to the introduction, and I'd like to give you the context. So Protect is a project, that a European funded project, and the aim of this project among these activities that are also related to providing resources and connecting public buyers, we would like to set the grounds to prepare a proposal for the Horizon Europe call on the pre-commercial procurement action. That is the Horizon call that you see here. That is the call on governance. It is a call of PCP. Provides a grant of 19 million to develop solutions related to Earth observation and climate services. And the idea is to base this proposal on the results and the outcome of Protect. So today we have 3 objectives, main objectives. First, to validate and further scope the common needs. That is the need that we have initially identified in the spring workshop. To identify any other use cases under the challenge, and also to define also whether there are other interested participants who would like to be part of the public buyers group. What is the methodology of today? We will do a brief recap of the spring workshops so that you see what happened on those spring workshops and the results of that, and also the state-of-the-art analysis that we have conducted until now. We will have the challenge presentation and interactive discussion. So you are, if you have questions, please raise your hand. Please, do not hesitate to ask questions or to, provide your feedback. The methodology would be a question and answer methodology, and you're always welcome to open up the dialogue. So let's go next to the next slide. Of course, we mentioned that we're preparing the grants for the pre-commercial procurement Horizon call, and this call is about the customization and pre-operationalization of prototypes and user services in the area of climate change, adaptation, and mitigation, building on the Copernicus services that respond to the common needs and beyond the state of the art. And that's very important, that it has to be a novel solutions targeting the needs of the public buyers group. We will use the pre-commercial procurement approach as a joint cross-border procurement. That means several public buyers led by one lead procurer who would, let's say, lead the procurement on behalf of the other public buyers. We would like that as a result of this call, of course, the idea is to have new opportunities for the wide market uptake and also to contribute to develop these joint specifications, the standardization of new solutions, and of course to remove these barriers for introduction of new innovations into the market, and have also an impact on the new businesses, jobs, sustainable growth in Europe. So having said this about the pre-commercial procurement call that we like to apply based on one of the challenges defined in the context of Protect, let's move to the next part of the presentation to share with you the results of the pain point workshops that were held in March 2023. So during these workshops, we defined some use cases, some functional descriptions, and some keywords to start the state-of-the-art analysis of potential solutions. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So we had the workshops in 5 application domains. One of the applications domain was the marine and coastal environment. And what the methodology that we applied during the spring workshop was to define, we applied some value methodologies, but in summary, what we did is to define the as-is present situation, what is going on now, what is the problem now, and what is the desired dream situation, what do we want to achieve, what is the outcome. And we define some steps to reach from this current situation to the ideal situation and define some steps in order to get there. Then we define some keywords, as you can see here, and then we actually ask other organizations whether this challenge is interesting for them, and we actually found out that the challenges are interesting for several organizations. So this was in marine coastal environments, in sustainable communities, specifically in this workshop, the challenge of fire resulting from waste was the outcome of this workshop. So in this as-is present situation, we know that there are facilities where waste is stored and there are spontaneous fires resulting, for example, in 3 times or more times a year per fire in a city. And this happens normally during the summer when the temperatures are higher. And at the present moment, there is no there's data, but there's not an automated solution to predict these fires and to take decisions to prevent them. And this is especially relevant for inspectors of environmental agencies that who monitor the facilities, resulting in quite an effort for the staff because they have to do this physically, presentially. It is not an automated solution for this. So that's why the desired and dream situation is to have this automated notification of risk of fire so that environmental agencies can take measures such as contacted companies or industry, those who have the storages, and prevent as well the air pollution and the damages that this fire can cause. So this is how the challenge of fire was described, and we defined some steps getting there within the domain of sustainable communities. So these are some of the steps were to explore the technical barriers, to develop a model with all the existing data, so to aggregate data, to train a model based on defined conditions, to anticipate the fire using the data, and to notify the action to prevent the fire in a timely manner. Some of the keywords defined in this challenge were the automated notification, waste fire, modeling, prediction of data, and data aggregation. So this challenge counted also with other organizations who thought that this is relevant for them. And this is something that we will discuss further today. So this challenge was identified within the application domain of sustainable urban communities. I mentioned that under Protect, we identified 5 challenges. The previous one was marine and coastal environments. The second one, sustainable communities. The third one is civil security and protection. Here we did the same. We're not going to go into the details of this challenge because it's part of the other workshop, but we did the same methodology for this one to identifying the desired situation, the steps, asking other organizations the relevance and finding some keywords. Then we had the other application domains, energy and utility. In this domain, we identified the challenge of the need to connect the supply and demand of sweet water, and we defined some steps in order to do that, the keywords, and also other organizations replied that this is relevant for them. The last application domain, agriculture, forestry, and other land use, identified as challenging that there is no planning that can be done automatically to prepare resilience plans, and they would like to have automated analysis. We defined some steps in order to get to this desired situation, the keywords, and also the relevance for other public contracting authorities or public buyers. So at the end, we identified which challenges were more let's say, important or relevant for the community of procurers part of Protect. We found out that the rapid mapping of floods was important. Second was the predicting the waste in fire. Then we had the illegal dumping of waste. We had also the prediction of water was also important, and also detecting the climate vulnerability was at the end. So we wanted to have a methodology to define from those challenges which will be the one that are priority, to find 4 of them, and we decided to have a mixed approach, looking at which one had the higher score in terms of relevance for organizations, but also to see whether there are committed contracting authorities that would like to initiate the public procurement. So we started discussions with contracting authorities, and at the end, both from the pain point workshops, but also with consultations with public procurers and surveys, we come up with other additional challenges to define the 5 challenges defined in the 5 application domains. So in addition to predicting the sweet water demand and supply, the flooding in coastal areas, the predicting waste fires, illegal dumping of waste, detecting climate vulnerability, we also had contracting authorities who presented the interest in building and restoring resilient cities infrastructure, and also predicting peak traffic times and CO emissions by types of transportation. So we connected in all the discussions in order to see which public buyers are interested in these topics in order to prepare the pitching sessions and also the market consultation. And we also designed some criteria in order to identify 4 challenges. And after the application of this selection criteria, which comprise the intention of the lead procurer to actually commit to procure for other procurers, a list of public buyers, the climate change impact that this challenge would have, the assessment of the maturity of potential technologies that could be tackling this challenge, that would be within technology readiness level 3 and 5 in order to have the grounds for the pre-commercial procurement of R&D services within these technology readiness levels. And the last one was the cross-border relevance. So from those 7 challenges, we came down to 4 of them: the floods mapping and prediction, the fire prediction and prevention, the climate resilient water solutions, and the sustainable and resilient infrastructure. So today we're going to go in depth into the second challenge, that is the fire challenge, as I call it. So first of all, let's have a policy perspective approach on why this challenge is relevant and what is the regulatory framework around this specific challenge. And in order to do that, I really welcome colleague Tamtam, and give you the floor, Tamtam, please.
Thank you, Ana Lucia. So apologies for those who attended the previous webinar and have heard some of what I'm going to say, but I think that's the rule of the game. I try to do it, well, slightly differently, maybe because the topic is quite different. And as you hinted, Ana Lucia, there is a strong demand on this fire challenge. And on the other hand, the connection with the regulatory framework is probably less straightforward than for floods. So it's actually an interesting case study from that point of view as well. But before I jump to that, a quick reminder of what climate services are supposed to be. So as I often say, don't look for the universal consensual definition of climate services, because that's what the French call un marronnier. So that's a topic you can bring up every year, and you're sure you create a heated debate about, no, that's not what it is. It's exactly that. And so, well, there is no universal definition of climate services for various reasons, and let's leave it at that. However, there are some consensual points. And what you find on this slide is mostly what you can find on the European Roadmap for Climate Services, which was issued in 2015. So it's a broad definition, but it's still useful because, in fact, many people even working on climate say, well, what do you mean by a climate service? Is it just sophisticated data that can be used only by a handful of people? So actually what is called climate services is customized solutions that can transform climate-related data, often coupled with other relevant information that can come from the ground, cultural information, historical information, etc., to help address a wide range of needs from society at large. So that includes the usual suspects, projections, forecasts, but also economic analysis, assessments, even counseling on best practices based on this coupled climate-related data and other information, or any other solution or service in relation to climate that may be of use to society at large. So that's literally the wording of the European Roadmap for Climate Services. And what is very important there is that climate services must allow all categories of end users to not just access, but action relevant climate-related data. So that means in particular that you need services which are upstream and still going to be handled by people who are very versed on data, and in particular climate rich data, but also by people who are practitioners on the ground and who sometimes don't have any basic training on technical data and these kind of things. And what is very important is that you give access and some levers for action to those people on the ground, if you want to support their actual needs the way they define them, as you have already pointed out, and Lucia, and also if you want to scale the action, because a number of those actions are going to have to be implemented on the ground by people who, again, are not specialists of either climate or climate-related data. So the potential, as was highlighted by a number of projects, Marco, for instance, the potential for new innovative connected climate services is largely untapped to this point. So this market has been steadily growing, and it is this growth seems to be accelerating. There are some regulatory incentives to do so as well, but still, what we see is that the potential is largely latent. Why, in particular? Because the way this market looks from the demand side is so vastly different from the way it has been designed initially, which is essentially from the supply side and people on Earth observation in particular. So this is a nice challenge to have, so to speak, but that's really one of the key challenges lying in the heart of the work that we're trying to do together. Can we move to the next slide, please? Gracias. Oh, this one is on floods. So yes. Yeah. So this is a bit of a spotlight on fires and regional adaptation. So there is a little bit ambiguity, of course, in this slide, because you do see fires all over the place in regional adaptation, and in Europe it's not completely a new thing, but I won't say anything new for any of us, saying that the fire issue has just grown exponentially in the last few years, and that has happened in areas which were consider themselves safe from the problem for potentially decades. I mean, if you take France, we had very bad fires in Brittany, for instance, which is typically the region where nobody expected to see that. And there are parts of Europe which are much more northern than ours, which have been affected as well. So, however, when you say fires in regional adaptation, yes, you find it, and I'm going to say a word about that, but in general, it's more referring to wildfires, forest fires, than to fires in an urban context and waste fires. So this means that if you look at the degree of priority that waste fires, for instance, have in regional strategies, the answer is not so straightforward. So I tried to spot some of those things in an analysis we did earlier this year. So the analysis is across a dozen countries, looking at the scale of regions and looking both at the adaptation strategies, but also at the, let's say, official documents endorsed by regional authorities on the main risks they are facing from climate change. And this analysis is available if you are connected to our registered and on our community platform, Protect Community Platform. You can have access to the analysis in full. So in this analysis, you see a lot of fire indeed. I mean, of course. So that is one of the sources of waste fires potentially. But another factor which is quite important, of course, is the risk of fires appearing as a result of heat waves, in particular of heat islands in cities. So this is an indirect proxy. I mean, I recognize that, but if you look at it from that perspective, you can see not only increasing fire and wildfire risks being brought up in virtually every country, but really this amplification by heat waves and urban heat islands. And that is something, if you're familiar with the topic, which is not just a Southern Europe topic, but very much and increasingly so a continental and Northern Europe topic, if only for this paradox, well, fake paradox, which is that, of course, the heat waves are a little bit less intense in absolute terms in those areas, but also their infrastructures are much less prepared for heat waves because the probability of that appearing was very low until recently. So that's really why we can be chasing a bit of the indirect drivers for action in that space. If you look at the energy and the utility space, you can see that there is a mention of the increased risk of landfill fires. So that comes much closer to our topic. And in particular, this is highlighted, for instance, in Lithuania. And Lithuania is not necessarily the first country you would think of for this. But I think that's combined also with more acute perception of the health and environmental risk of bad waste management in Central and Eastern Europe. So not so surprising after all. And of course, you still have as I mentioned, this agriculture, forestry, and other land use risk of fires increasing, and the repercussions that can have on peri-urban and urban environments and on waste fires. Can I move to the next slide, please? This is, as I mentioned in the previous webinar, just a very high-level bird's-eye overview of legal texts of reference at EU and national levels for each of the four challenges that Ana Lucia has described. So there are the foundational documents in three of the challenges. Those are directives. So you have the Floods Directive in 2007, Waste Framework Directive in 2008, which is the most relevant or least irrelevant for the waste fire challenge. Then you have the Water Framework Directive in 2000. And for the sustainable infrastructure, I mentioned the strategy, the new strategy on adaptation to climate change, the version that was released in 2021, because the sustainable infrastructure challenge is probably one of the most overarching, spanning virtually every segment of society and economy. At national levels, this is translated because there is a prescriptive dimension, of course, in EU directives. This is transposed through the national laws, so the water laws and flood risk management plans for the floods challenge. For the one we have at hand, the fires, that's again in the laws and acts on waste and waste management. So we'll come back to that in a minute. For the Water Framework Directive, the main tool is those river basin management plans, which are at the level of basins, regional, national, and sometimes transnational. So the articulation of all this is actually quite interesting. And for the EU strategy on adaptation to climate change, the prescriptive power on national and regional strategies is less direct, but still there is more and more convergence about those priorities, in particular through the mission adaptation that has been launched by the European Union. So the thing that is common to all those challenges, of course, is that it's a dynamic process. So you have cycles of updating, improving, measuring, monitoring, reporting, and then multiple iterations. And one interesting thing is, for instance, for this fires challenge, is the work we can do together on PCP, going to bring useful information to inform future legislative evolutions on those topics. So if I move to the next slide, please. Okay, yes. So this is EU Waste Framework Directive. So I won't be very long on that because, as I hinted, not very subtly, it is relevant, but rather indirectly to what we want to do, but still is the main reference text at EU level on waste. So it's a directive from 2008. You can find it by its formal name on the first line. The basic principles of this directive are waste management to avoid endangering human health, harming the environment, creating a risk for water, air, soil, plants, animals, and causing a nuisance through noise or others. So in a way, if you think of waste fires, it does speak to a number of those things, right? I mean, obviously the human health, which may be the first driver, harming the environment, the risk for, so everything is in theory, seen by through the lens of waste fires. The only thing is that you don't find much mention of waste fires in those regulations. So the waste directive is built on a 5-step waste hierarchy. So it sounds familiar, but it's interesting to see that those 5 steps are really put forward. So this means that you should do prevention as a first priority, then preparing for reuse, recycling, which is what people have in mind when they say circular economy, but it's not just that, recovery of waste, and then disposal of waste, which is supposed to be the last solution. So it sets targets to every EU country, of course, and I didn't try to list them, but there's a long list of targets. There are basic requirements, and then you have complementary requirements. So it's actually very detailed technically. There is a strong emphasis on circular economy objectives, which is prominently reflected in several national laws. Some of them are literally called waste law for circular economy. And however, as I said, sadly for us, but maybe not so sad, there is very limited reference to fire risks and also to illegal dumping. And generally, it doesn't refer to the climate dimension. So the waste management challenge is not seen primarily as a climate challenge, which is okay in a way, it's logical, but I think it's interesting to see that the impact of climate change and of spiraling climate change on waste hazards is actually not taken explicitly into account. And well, I'm biased, but I think it should. So to move to the last slide, please. So how does it translate at national level? It's a bit of the same story. So almost all of the EU countries have a law on waste or waste management. In a few cases, those waste regulations are part of a broader environmental conservation law, which I think is interesting, by the way, because the connections are maybe more, at least you know that those different regulations have been somehow connected, even though the links are not so detailed and explicit. That's the case in France, for instance, in Greece, in the Netherlands. You know better than me. In some countries such as Belgium and Italy, you don't find so much in terms of the national code, but what you see is that the waste sector is regulated by a set of more specific texts, which are referenced very conveniently on one portal. But in fact, those are really specific, sector-specific or type of waste-specific texts. And in some cases, regulations are held mostly at regional level. That's, for instance, the case in Austria. So it's explicitly delegated to regional authorities to regulate on waste. That is linked also to something that you're familiar with, which is that the waste hazards are in a way quite place-specific. Not just the type of waste you're dealing with, but also the ecosystems that might be impacted by poor waste management. So that's one of the reasons why it's a bit decentralized. So the general waste regulations, same story, tend to be explicit on the categories of waste, the specific risks, technical requirements, the prevention of pollution, but they don't say anything or very scarce comments about fire risks. And only a few do mention illegal dumping, and the link with climate change issues is not mentioned. So I will stop there. Maybe the only comment I would make is that okay, this shows, I think, that the regulatory driver is not the primary driver for action on waste fires so far. There are probably a lot of lower level regulations that touch to that, but it's not creating necessarily the main momentum. However, this means that the drivers are a combination of other incentives. So they can be on health, as I said, they can be on just civil security, it can be on a number of those things. And it's actually interesting to see how the work that can be done through a PCP can still draw on some of those wider texts and try to in a way fill the dots. So say, what does it mean? How does it translate in terms of waste hazard regulation? And how can evidencing the data and becoming much better in prevention of those waste fires be fed back to maybe not regulators, but at least to public authorities, and through that to future regulation amendments, and just give more tools for the measurability and the actionability of those data. So I will stop here. I hope it was clear enough, and just don't hesitate to ask questions to more knowledgeable people than me.
Thank you so much, Tantan, for this clear and interesting presentation. I think it's very important that we bring these aspects into the discussion for the PCP, also understanding what is the actual impact of this challenge of the waste fires, how they have an impact in environment, on health, etc. And yeah, tackle those when we are describing also this challenge in the future of procurement, in the future of PCP. So I would like to ask the participants if they have any questions until now, or you can do it through the chat, and you can also wait until the open discussion starts. And I just would like to mention that, emphasize that when we're looking at the different challenges and selecting the challenges, we also realize that the challenges that initially were brought within an application domain were actually relevant for different application domains. And that was the case of the fire challenge that was relevant for sustainable communities, but also in relation to agriculture, if we think about forest fire, but also civil protection and security, because they need to act in the case of specific situation of fire, whether to prevent or to react to that. So having said that, and if you don't have any questions, I will move now to a presentation that tells us more about the potential of Earth observation in the challenge of fire. And for that, I would like to give the floor to Ioana. Please, Ioana.
Thank you, Ana Lucia. Thank you, Tamtam, as well. I know that some of you have been in the previous session, so just so you know, I will give you again an overview regarding Earth observation and what it means and how it works. So the Earth observation, according to European Space Agency, is defined as the process of acquiring observations of the Earth's surface, but also atmosphere, via sensors mounted on satellites, aircraft, drones, or at the surface, resulting in data in the form of digital imagery. For the last several decades, Earth observation has been an essential tool for monitoring the planet, its environment, the human activities on the planet, but also their impacts. For example, Earth observation has been fundamental to monitoring climate change over the last decades, because the satellites are providing a clear, uniform, and continuous picture of changes across the entire planet. And the vast amount of the data collected through the Earth observation is processed and converted into actionable information for the end users across several industries. And the two supporting technologies that are enabling this intermediate step of processing the Earth observation data are artificial intelligence and cloud computing. When it comes to cloud computing, the advancements over the past decades have enabled the efficient storage and processing of digital data, which facilitated the conversion of the Earth observation data into useful analytics, while the artificial intelligence, which is the field of computer science dealing with making intelligent computer programs, has allowed the huge amount of petabytes of data that has been collected from the satellites on a daily basis to be combined effectively, allowing the users to derive the needed insights. So these two together, AI and cloud computing, have enabled the rapid growth of the Earth observation market that led to the development of several applications of Earth observation. Now, if we go to the if we go to the next slide, Ana Lucia, we can discuss about the Copernicus program. Before? Is no problem, don't worry. Yes, this one, thank you so much. Well, Copernicus program is one of the largest Earth observation program that is being managed by the European Commission, and it has an objective to monitor and forecast the state of the environment on land, sea, and the atmosphere. In order to support the climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies, the efficient management of emergency situations, and the improvement of the security of every citizen. Well, served by the dedicated Copernicus Sentinel satellites, the data collected is then integrated with non-satellite sources to provide reliable and up-to-date information about 6 thematic areas, which are land, marine, atmosphere, climate change, emergency management, but also security. Now, if we go to the next slide, I bet that you are wondering what is the role of Earth observation in climate services. As we all know, the climate crisis continues to evolve with the ongoing global warming. So both the governments and the businesses around the world are focusing on climate adaptation, but also climate mitigation initiatives. In all these initiatives, Earth observation data is expected to play a crucial role in the development of climate services, both focusing on adaptation but also on mitigation. The satellites, which have been monitoring the Earth continuously and helping our understanding of climate change, provide vital information regarding the state, but also the evolution of the environment, as well as regarding the human activities on the planet. As a result, the climate services applicable to several industries are expected to integrate the Earth observation data into their products in order to take into account the environmental factors and changes over the time. Several emerging climate services have already started to integrate Earth observation data into their development, from providing extreme weather alerts for better disaster preparedness to both the governments but also the businesses, to develop to delivering the crop level insights to farmers, enabling water savings and improving overall yields. These are only a couple of climate services that are currently available on the market across a number of industries. Now, if we go to the next slide, we have examples of climate services that are applied to the 4 challenges, and we can go to the one for fire. Well, as Ana Lucia mentioned, some of the climate services are tackling different application domains as well as the need. So we decided to have the fire challenge in the category of civil security and protection, and we can discuss about the monitoring of wildfires. Well, the increasing availability of Earth observation data, which is combined with the advanced analytics provided by the artificial intelligence, but also the machine learning, along with the exceptional processing power of cloud computing, can generate a service that can map fires and also provide fast, reliable, and accessible information as required by the wildfire fighting community. And I know that my colleague, our colleague Paola from Ecosistema will go in more depth regarding this challenge. So if you want, you can also ask questions now if you have, or you can wait for the more detailed description, and you can ask after if you still have questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanna. Case Gaudenberg is going to go more in depth in the challenge in this session. So, but anyway, we can, if you have questions now, otherwise we can have these questions in the open discussions. And now let's go to move further to the next topic, and this is the state-of-the-art analysis. We'd like to share with you the preliminary results on this challenge. So looking at the patterns and standards, what have we found based on keywords? So I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Maria. Please, Maria.
Thank you, Anna, and welcome everyone to this session. So we are in the scope of Protect project. We are also conducting a state-of-the-art analysis, and here in this presentation, firstly, we'll make an introduction on the methodology that we are following and what we're aiming to achieve at the end of our analysis and our research. And on the second half, I will just give you an overview of the first results related to the fire challenge. So the state-of-the-art analysis includes 3 activities. The first one is connected with the analysis of the intellectual property rights. So here we are listing the existing patents and standards. The second part is connected with the commercial off-the-shelf products mapping. So we are analyzing the market in order to see if there are any available solutions in the market that could tackle the challenge as described. And at the end of our activities, we will also analyze all the material collected, and we will try to transform this list of into a list of technologies, assessing at the same time the TRL level of the technologies identified as the most promising ones. What is important to highlight here is the fact that at the end of our activities, the main goal that we have is to identify the room for innovation in order to set the grounds for the future pre-commercial procurement. Next slide, please. So in order to dive into more details about what these activities are composed of, let's start with the first part related to the IPR analysis. So here the consortium will do a macro analysis of the total stock of relevant patents, standard essential patents, in order to gain some valuable information on their type, scope, breadth, content, radicalness, technical relevance. And at the same time, we will aim to identify the associated institutions that are connected with this material and the related suppliers that are owning these IPRs. Having this analysis in place, it will enable us to identify the room for innovation and or standardization if applicable. And we will also identify the maturity level and the result that can be achieved in a given solution space. At the end of this analysis, we will also have essential input regarding the expected timeline and investment for the delivery of the solution that we are targeting. The initial analysis will be, of course, complemented by a technical analysis, which will take place with the support of the consortium technical experts. And at the end, our aim is to identify, if applicable, top 10 patents that apply to the specific challenge. It's important to highlight here that the activity of the IPR analysis provides input to the open market consultation activities. And on the second note is also giving input to the drafting of the tender documentation, especially in relation to the IPRs, where it enables us to reduce the knowledge asymmetry between the contracting authorities and the market. Next slide, please. So diving into the second part of our activities related to the commercial off-the-shelf products mapping, here we aim to identify and evaluate the products that are available in the market and that can satisfy the gaps listed in the challenge. Our goal is to have at least 5 commercial off-the-shelf products per domain. At the end, as discussed, we need to analyze all the material collected in order to proceed with a TRL assessment. So after obtaining all the outcomes of our first 2 steps, the participants will also work on identifying the TRL level of the technologies that are connected with the commercial products and also the macro analysis results. Moreover, from a technical point of view, we will conclude with the 5 most relevant technologies that are connected with the challenge and can be eligible for the upcoming PCP as discussed. We need also to note here that one of the aims of our activities is to explore the possibility of having some transversal technologies that can be used in more than one application domains. So here you can see the technology readiness level and how this is connected also with the pre-commercial procurement phases. As you can see, the first phase, which is related to solution design, starts from material level 3 to 4, and at the end of the process, we need to have concluded with a TRL 7 or 8 after the original development of a limited volume of first products and their testing. However, in the next slide, there is a more, let's say, relevant TRL scale that it is dedicated to the software used for mapping the climate services. So here you can see also in the definition column the different stages of the TRL level that we are targeting through a pre-commercial procurement, starting again from TRL 3 or 4, targeting TRL 8. Next slide, please. Okay, so in order to conclude this part, we would like to share with you some preliminary results from the challenge of FIRE in relation to the patents and the standards that we have been working on. So our analysis revealed that there is that the research is focused on methods for identifying the fire risk level. There is also a lot of research activity in the early warning and prediction of fires, and also the majority of the research community in the patents is focusing on the fire management system, meaning starting from the status, the monitoring and the forecast. And when we're talking about forecast, they are also working on the estimated progression of fire. These all are also fed into maps and graphical representation of the fire information. However, through our research, we have not identified any specific results connected to waste fires. However, the inventions identified can provide a good technological basis. At the bottom of the slide, you can see the connected and the associated technologies and tools that have been identified through our initial analysis of the patents. So I won't go through this list as it is still our research is still ongoing. However, the innovation and the research activities, as indicated, lays in the software part of the solutions, and the patents are also connected with some hardware activities. Next slide, please. Yeah. And just to conclude, sorry, I had here some echo.
I think it's you, Gabriela. Could you mute your mic, please?
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So just to conclude all this presentation, we have in the next slide some results from the iPolitics platform that we have been working on in order to identify the most relevant patents and standards. First of all, here you can see the list of the keywords that were used in order to perform our analysis. We have several keywords identified connected with the challenge itself and also to the targeted technologies. This provides us room for identifying the most relevant patents and give us flexibility in our analysis. So Ana Lucia, in the next slide, I think that we can see how this tool gives us an overview of the results of the different patents. So you can see in the slide here that we have information regarding the patent itself, the market overview. In the next slide, there are indications on the different maps and how the patents are distributed around the different countries, and also our analysis when a specific let's say a patent is identified that fits the challenge that we're targeting. We will also go through the patent itself. As you can see here, we have information about the abstract and other information that are relevant to our research. So yeah, and as you can see also in this slide, the tool that we're using provides us several information about the industry trends. So how the research evolves throughout time, as you can see in this slide. And in the last example, you can also see some indications about how patents are covering the publication over time. Yeah, and I think more or less this is some examples of our research. And just to let you know, the same examples and the same overview applies also for our standard exercise that we're conducting. And yeah, I think this is all on my end.
Thank you very much, Maria. Precisely on time. That's really important also. Thank you for this overview. And I see as also for the floods challenge, in the fire challenge, when you see the geographical distribution of the patents, we see them mostly in the United States and other parts, but not in Europe. So that's also relevant because that gives room for innovation, the novelty of patents in Europe. So now we go to the most interesting part, I think, well, everything is interesting, but we go more in depth into the challenge. So we will see, we'll find now the slide, the right slide. So we will go into the challenge of fire today, and we will have the participation of Kees. I would like you to give the floor, Kees from DCMR from Rotterdam, and please take the floor. You can introduce yourself and start your presentation.
Thank you, Anna. My name is Kees Koudenburg. I work at the DCMR Environmental Protection Agency in the Rotterdam area. Before I was a team manager at the DCMR, I was inspecting myself. I was inspecting Seveso sites and the bigger waste management sites. Next slide, please. when we're talking about waste fires, I'm talking specifically about uncontrolled fires in waste storage sites. In the Netherlands, on average, about 77, but that's an average. If you look at the year 2020, it were more than 100 waste fires in a year. Some other data, 60 waste fires on average in Sweden, 25 in Austria. There isn't much data on the internet about other countries, so I'm really curious how it is, for instance, in Spain or in Italy. Let's go to the next slide, please. If you look at the impact of waste fires, obviously it is a big impact on the environment. When you look at waste fires, all kinds of pollutants are come free from waste fires, like dioxins and small particles. But there's also a different cost, like the financial cost. There's lots of recyclables, buildings get damaged, you have to treat the soil, you have to treat the water. And those costs also ripple down to the social cost, the people living in the country. Like we have to pay taxes for every soil remediation that has to take place by the government. Also, the fires have a big impact on health, your sense of security. If you see fire burning in a waste disposal site, it doesn't give you much sense of security. We get, for instance, there's been a fire last year and in the Rotterdam area, and we got 30 odor complaints, and the fire only lasted 1 day. So there's many complaints. And that was in the harbor area, for long distance from buildings. And like I said earlier, the costs are redirected on the taxes. Mm-hmm. Next slide, please. If you look at the distribution, where the fires mostly take place, they mostly take place at landfills and recycle centers. And if you look at the causes, the biggest part of the causes are unknown. But for those cases that we do know the causes, a large part is through spontaneous ignition. If you look at metal fires, more and more fires are caused by lithium-ion batteries that also spontaneously ignite because of impact. That's causing to be a big problem year by year. If you look at contributing factors about waste fire, how does a waste fire come to itself? It's obviously caused by the type of waste. If you have waste that can't be can catch fire, then it won't be then it won't will be flammable. But it's also the amount of waste, like for instance what the height is, how high the waste is stored. And of course, what Anna said in the beginning, what the ambient temperature is. Research shows that how bigger the variation in temperature, how more likely it is to spontaneous ignite. Also, the ambient moisture content is one of the contributing factors. For instance, mattresses that are collected at waste sites are more likely to ignite if they are wet than if they are dry. Wind isn't it is only contributing for when the fire has happened, for the spread of the fire, but also relevant. And of course, the on-site remediation factors, like how big is the pile of waste? Are there walls between the piles of waste? How high do they store the waste? Do they self-inspect the piles of waste with infrared temperature monitors? Those are some remediating factors that they are on site. So come to the use case. It would be very nice for inspecting agencies like the DCMR to predict the waste fires likelihood with AI or machine learning, and combining remote sensing data with historical and weather data. And it's not only for environmental protection agency, but also for the waste sites themselves. The only method they use now is to monitoring with infrared pistols, but that's only one part of the factors that instigate a fire. So if there's a model with you can predict the likelihood of waste fires, that would contribute to a better environment. Next slide, please. So the foreseen steps in a possible project would be exploring the boundaries, that there are aggregating all relevant data, and make a model. And when the model is made, you can train it on site. I've been in a project to see if it's possible to monitoring soil displacement. And it was very important to train the model, because first we had a model that could recognize piles of soil, but we had to train the model on site to see which was a soil or which was just a normal hill. So on-site validation is very important. Then the next step, it would be to utilize the predictions, and the final step, implementing the notifications. Last slide, please. Yeah, thank you for listening. Are there some questions?
Thank you very much, Kees. I think when you sent the presentation, I was impressed by looking at the images and see, these clouds of smoke caused by the fires. And if you think of people living close to it, or you think how much pollution you get from that, how much damage you get from that, and thinking that we all produce a lot of garbage, a lot of waste. And so waste is everywhere. So this is a common challenge, I think, for cities. This challenge was also discussed this morning in the iProcureNet forum. They had a meeting in Cyprus, and they were discussing specifically the challenge of waste fires. And some of the participants brought to the discussion, like it's also interesting for civil protection and security organizations and first responders to know, for example, the composition of the toxics coming from the fire and the smoke, because if they're going to intervene, for example, to tackle the fires, the firemen, perhaps it's not safe for them to come close to this area, because they could be the toxic substances in the fire. So for them, it was also kind of a use case to whether using these technologies and earth observation, to what extent it is possible to identify the substances or the chemicals or other things that are in the combustion of this area. So I don't know if you could say anything about that. Other raised the point of whether these fires could happen also from waste in the water or substances in the water, but that's another topic. But perhaps you can say something about it.
Yes. Of course, monitoring the contents of the smoke coming from fire is difficult with satellites, because it's only a normal fire burns a day. Especially with metal fires, it's difficult to put out the fire. You have to have a lot of water. But monitoring the contents of the fire would be better to do with drone, to use drones. We don't have any pilots, but in Rotterdam area we have e-noses that monitor the air quality, and we have a lot of those in Rotterdam area. So it would be possible to make a better model, especially for smoke coming from waste fires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. I would also like to mention that DCMR has expressed the interest to lead this challenge. This is why you're presenting today. And I think you also have brought this challenge, put on the table this challenge in conversations with other environmental agencies that would be interested in
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that case?
Yeah, it's of course not only a local problem for the Rotterdam area, it's a bigger problem, waste fires. And yeah, especially for the environment protection agencies, for such a phenomenon that has a larger scale, it's important to have more data and have a better model for prediction of waste fires.
Okay, thank you so much. I will ask the participants if they have any questions, if they have these similar challenges, or they would like to bring into the discussion a different use case related to the fire challenge or more detailed aspects. Anybody who would like to join the discussion? We can do a little round, perhaps. Well, I can ask you to provide some feedback looking at the list of participants. I, for example, have Agnes. Would you like to mention anything, Agnes? Any comment, any input in this regard? Or questions that you would have? No? I have yeah, Agnes. Thank you so much, Agnes.
Hello.
I see that you connected. Thank you. So please
I
let us know where
uh,
you come from and yeah.
So my name is Agnes. I'm from Hungary because I'm connected because of my friend Leskó György, or György Leskó, that a civil protection member and chief of this protection, civil protection. And we are friends because we have a firefighter association. So it's very good to mention me by this topic, Fire 2 challenge. But I know nothing about this project, so I listen everything what you say now. And this is very good to contact with you, but I don't know what to do here at this topic now. So
Okay.
I'm very interested hearing the team.
Great.
So I can't questioning nothing. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay, Agnes, but thank you so much for the feedback. So do you think that this is relevant from the Hungarian Civil Protection Organization? You could have, for example, in your case, like a notification or alerts, or what kind of information when you want to intervene in a case of fire? What would you need? What is of interest of you to learn, to know?
Because of disaster management, I work too. Therefore, I know about waste fires, something. So it's very important to save our world and the environment. And therefore, very, very often, the landfills have fires. So I don't know how to protect against the waste fires really good. It's very hard to protect against these fires, and we have to protect these fields. So I don't know the money or anything else should be to do against these fires. So I'm interested about the team, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Agnes, thank you. I wonder
thank you.
if how often do you have these fires? Do you
Nowadays,
say?
about 2 months per. So we have one fire per 2 months.
One fire per
Okay.
2 months. Okay.
I forgot to mention, there's an additional benefit to creating a model for especially waste disposal sites. If you have a model that monitors the amount of waste collected there, you can also predict odor complaints or different complaints. You can also see if the rules are followed by the waste sites. There are different rules, like for instance, you may store the waste not much higher than 5 meters. So it's also a monitoring tool for competent authorities on site. Anna mentioned it at the start of this presentation. The temperatures are high in the Netherlands right now. Last week, we got more than 100 complaints about a waste facility because of the special weather circumstances. So you can also predict odor complaints, or yeah, that's an additional benefit of making a model.
Yeah, okay. So the model should take into account all these different variables, and perhaps we should list all these aspects also for the purpose of defining these use cases for the market consultation. So I'm also taking notes on these. Thank you so much, Agnes. So I see that is important. Now, yeah, you mentioned that you have one fire every 2 months. We don't know how much it costs to actually to intervene or to take the measures after the fire, but that could also be something that we collect from you, this information later on, coming back to you. Or I think you're there.
Okay.
Okay, but you can also mention it now, how much effort that it takes for you every time that there's a fire. How much effort does it mean for the Hungarian Civil Protection Organization? Could you tell us something about that?
The civil protection doesn't mean here. It depends on about the country because we are the disaster management is belongs to this team, and therefore the costs of the fires belongs to the country. So
yeah. Okay. Well, I was just thinking of the efforts to go to the site and actually act on the site. But yeah, thank you so much. Anybody else who would like to participate and mention anything? I see Antonia on the list. If you like to make any comment, welcome, Antonia. Or Silvia. Oh, here comes Antonia. Yes.
I think for me, the whole topic of waste fires is a little bit new, but I find it quite interesting that emerged as the main challenge in terms of fire risk, as of course we also have wildfires, as what was happening in Greece earlier this year, etc. So I wonder to what extent we can also address those challenges, or if we are really focusing specifically on waste fires, or perhaps even some of the things we develop for waste fires can be transferable to other types of fires.
Thank you so much, Antonia. That's really great that you mentioned these, because indeed we want to see on and under the umbrella of fire challenge, different use cases, and we see one of them that is came out in the workshop is the waste fires challenge, but it could also be possible other type of fires, for fires in the forest. But some technologies could actually tackle the different types of fires, or that's something that we need to assess. And that's also a question for Kees. The same circumstances of the same factors that we need to consider in both scenarios, because this is a different use case. This is fire in say in the forest, or a different type of fire than the waste fire. What do you think about that?
I don't have much knowledge about forest fires, but I can see that there are multiple factors that contribute to waste fires are also applicable to forest fires, of course. Yeah. Like humidity, like wind, like temperature. All those factors can overlap with the same factors as in waste fires. Yeah.
So could we include other use cases under the
Of course. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yes,
Sylvia. If you allow me to add something.
Of course.
I will completely agree with what Antonia said, because also from our point of view, from I'm representing here the fire department of Dortmund. It's quite interesting because usually when we are talking about waste fires, we can say that they are clear localized. So we know the area where they are. It is quite a small area. We know what about what kind of storage is there and so on. And there are some solutions, technical solutions to identify fire, to recognize fire, and to put the alert on. And when we are talking about forest fires or wildland fires, it is more complex because we don't know where it's going to happen. We don't know about the surrounding, the weather, the humidity, the wind, and so on. And so this is, if we are going to talk about, for example, the complexity, we can start with the waste fires on a quite low level, and then we are going to make it more complex, and then we are going to forest fires, wildland fires, and so on. So I think it is a good starting point, but nevertheless we should think not try to think too low and too small, but give the option to be bigger and make it a more bigger challenge.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Sylvia. So there will be one application, let's say, for waste fires, but also we need to define, and this is very important input for also the description of this challenge for the market consultation, etc., to think about the different levels of complexity. You have the waste fire that is localized, but then bigger fires or fires that we don't know where they will be localized. So that's very, very important. I see, Antonia, you have your hand raised. Do you want to say something additional?
Yeah, just thinking again on the Earth observation aspect of it. I'm aware of some studies that have also done mapping of fire fuel load, which is relevant for forest fires. So you can, use satellite data to map regions, forest adjacent areas that have very high fuel load in terms of, very dry brush and these kinds of things, which then creates kind of a fire risk map. So that could also be perhaps an interesting way of approaching these more complex fire risk situations, with also using Earth observation as a climate service.
Yeah, great. That's a very good input. Thank you so much, Antonia.
We're going to put a link in the chat on that, actually.
Perfect. Super. That's really, really good information. I was thinking about this risk, fire risk map and situation. Yeah, indeed. I was trying to think about just something that was mentioned also today in relation to the fires, but I just passed my mind. But I will come back with this. Just what something you mentioned brought me to this. But anyway, any other input from you? I just thank you. I just got it. Yeah, great. Let's see if other participants want to say. Stefka, please go ahead.
Maybe a little bit. It's partially to contribute and partially to self-promote, because as part of Protect, we're also organizing the training curriculum. As a part of the training curriculum on the 29th of September, we would have a webinar focused on the fire challenge. So maybe it would be also interesting there to continue the discussion further, and also think about how we can scale the definition and the demand, and how to structure it better. I would put some details in the chat, but I can also reach out to you once the registration link is out, and to be very helpful to have you out there so that we can continue the discussion there.
Thank you, Stefka. Yeah, that would be a great opportunity to complement and go further into the analysis of this challenge. Yes, so okay, I'm taking notes on that. I'm going to go again through the participants. I see Stefania. Would you like to provide some input, Stefania? Some feedback on these challenges, something that is relevant for your organization, that something that we have missed, any use case that you would like to point out? No, that's okay. Yeah. I have Gabriela. Would you like to add anything to this discussion, Gabriela?
Was very interesting for me because in Romania just happened one big fire and our fire workers have problem with that. So I read and I listened very carefully. Was very, very good. And I'm not in the fire area or in waste area, just in hospital waste, but was very interesting for me. And it's first step it's the beginning in this was very useful for me. Yes.
Thank you, Gabriela. Just a question for you. Have you experienced waste fires in the sites of hospitals?
No, in the hospital, no, but I experienced once in my life in the village, but accidentally, not in my worker area, not in my professional area, was accidentally there, and I saw it, and was awful because you can't breathe, and you don't have air, and all the people are in panic. Firefighters, of course, that they come very quick, but you also need medical staff, and it's very hard. If it's uncontrolled or it's some natural thing or accidental, it's very awful thing. Yes, it's.
Thank you, Gabriela.
Yeah.
And I see the echo because of your microphone.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. But one aspect that I wanted to mention before, now I got it, I remember, is about the comparison of, landfill or waste storage from one moment to the other. And this was interesting for a use case also related to waste, to see, for example, how new waste has been dumped for illegal dump, to relate this to illegal dump. And of course, yeah, we're talking about the challenge of fire, but it could also happen that illegal dumped waste ignites. So that was one of the use cases that this morning in the context of eProcureNet was also expressed, the importance as a use case to be able, using Earth observation and then combination of technologies, to compare what it was and if there was waste that was not there before that has been dumped, and also to compare the levels. You mentioned, Case, the height of the piles of garbage, also to see what has changed in time. So that's something that is also relevant to measure. Can you say something about it?
True. It's almost the same as monitoring soil, which we did earlier in the DCMR area. Just by monitoring the difference in height in places you don't expect where differences should be. You can monitor. You can see if it's waste or if it's soil. But waste is more diverse than soil, of course. So it would be difficult to make a model to detect illegal waste dumping, but not impossible, I guess.
Okay. Do you see that this could be under the umbrella of this challenge as well? so one of the use cases to detect also, you know,
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. I'm just taking my notes on this. That's very interesting. Anything else? I see the participants here. I don't know if Jerome wants to mention something. You're in my list, or Joanna. Oh, here comes
from
Jerome.
our side, no.
Jerome. Okay, thank you. I see again other participants. Okay, but one thing that I would like to come back to is the analysis of TamTam. And I see TamTam Stefka still here to enlighten us on this, because it was mentioned that there are not such a European regulations on the waste of fires as such. There's regulation about waste, but could this be seen as this challenge from the regulatory analysis is not as relevant for the environmental impact? Could we reach this conclusion, or we can also reach the conclusion that we have more flexibility actually to define and to propose after the PCP on this challenge regulatory reforms? Don't know if I'm clear about it, but this is a question for TamTam.
Go ahead,
or
Stefka.
I don't know if it was clear enough. Yeah.
I mean, what we do tend to say is that the policy very often is what brings the demand for climate services, but that's not necessarily the case, and that's not exclusively the case. I think that, for instance, PCP is a very nice instance when you have a concrete demand and you already have people working on, well, not necessarily the same, but similar services. So they are the ones who would need to see if they have the capacity to maybe repurpose their products. And I don't think that not having one specific policy on that would really change the demand on that, considering that it's a very, very tangible problem that I think a lot of, for instance, public authorities have independently. They have specific policy that tells them that they should put down the fires. We are all aware that they should put down the fires. I hope that answered your question, Ana Lucy, if I haven't misunderstood it.
Thank you, Stefka. Yeah, so indeed, the fact that there's not a European harmonized policy on waste fire doesn't mean that there's a real challenge and that we could move forward for pre-commercial procurement, because it's actually a problem that we need to tackle. And I don't know if TamTam wanted to add something about it.
No, maybe very briefly. I think what is challenging but interesting with this is that there seems to be side drivers. So I mean, there is I think on the waste policy itself, the fact that not just waste fires, but the fact that new risks or the new scale of risk brought by global warming and is not factored in is more of a concern in a way. I mean, in a way, the fact that there is no mention of waste fires, I also looked to references on, climate-related risks. I didn't find anything. So I think in a way that's a tip of the iceberg. So it's maybe a nice way, as we said before, to start with this specific challenge, but really look at how it can be scaled. And from the other direction, I suppose that that was the other comment on the fires. There are maybe more, let's say, more explicit regulatory drivers on other types of fires, but in fact, some of those might benefit the topic of waste fires technically. I mean, and when I say technically, it's not just how you measure and detect them, but it's also how you can connect them with other indicators in the city. So. I think maybe with one thing that I'm not sure how easy it is, sorry, but what would be interesting is to see how much we can optimize the combination of those different drivers. So in a way, the catalyzer is this topic of waste fires, but it's really to see, because you don't have direct, regulatory incentives to do so. In fact, how can you actually optimize those side drivers, as I call them? So I think that's probably interesting to see it from, so to speak, our side, but also from the side of the buyers and what units they would need to involve in this topic, who normally don't think about waste fires in their everyday life.
Okay, thank you very much, TamTam. We're reaching to, on the time almost, so we go quickly. Just yeah, to ask you, do you agree on this challenge? Would you like to add anything else? But I think you already provided some input, but of course you're welcome to provide more input. Yeah, something additional is that the other use case scenario under fire that was important for the civil protection and security domain was that in addition to monitor the fire or predict the fire, also being able to trace or track the cause of the fire. That means identifying responsible for the fire in the case that somebody or someone dumped, for example, a waste that was ignited. So this was another use case that was proposed, the possibility to trace individuals responsible for criminal behavior, and for example, to have a methodology that could inform the authorities on that waste has been dumped in specific sites, and to be able to report this officially, and to be able to have effective measures, and if possible, also to react to prevent cross-border effects. So that was another use case that was brought under this umbrella of the fire prediction and prevention by the civil protection and security domain. And of course, today we don't have Josef Kubinek from the Ministry of Interior Affairs of Slovakia because he's in the iProcureNet event at the moment, but he raised this case also to other members of the civil protection and security organizations, and this was also interesting for them. But we don't know whether this is possible actually with Earth observation to do this kind of monitoring, tracing, and tracking. So this is another functionality. What do you think about that? Just briefly, do you think it's I don't know if Joanna is there to think about the potential of Earth observation or a combination of technologies for this specific function on tracing. But I don't know if you're here, but that's something else that we will.
I am so sorry. I was just about to say that I really have to go to jump in another meeting.
No worries, Joanna, but that's we leave it this to the discussion that was having Joseph was having also in the other workshop. Because now we have 1 minute, so I would just like to go further. If you have any other input on that, now we go to the conclusions of this. Let me see. We just go on the conclusions for now. So now I would like to mention to you that there are some steps that are upcoming. We are drafting the open market consultation documents. They will integrate the input from the painpoint workshops. We aim to have also the e-pitching sessions on 18 and 19 of September. You are welcome to participate in these e-pitching sessions. The technology providers will present potential solutions to the 4 challenges of PROTECT, and the public buyers are welcome to participate as observers. We also will publish on the 20th of September the prior information notice, that is the PIN, to announce the open market consultation, and we would like to know who are the interested public buyers in each of the challenges. You can express your interest to list you in the PIN as well, and the market consultation as such will be conducted through online webinars on the 15th and 16th of November. Public buyers are also welcome to participate, to have this dialogue with the market. And we aim to prepare this public buyers group. That's why the expression of interest is important, so that we could actually have the buyers group for each of the challenge, and to move forward with market consultations and the commitment for the preparation of the pre-commercial procurement for the Horizon Europe goal. After the results of the market consultation, we will build a business case and a procurement strategy based on those results. So this is, for me, the end, and we reach the time for our session, and I want to thank you very much for your presence today, for your feedback, and we stay connected. Do not hesitate to send me a message if you want more information. You can also register in the PROTECT website to be part of the buyers group. And if there's any more comments, I would like to finish the session of today. Thank you so much. I think Ioana also put something on the chat, and I wish you a really nice afternoon and special thanks. Yes?
Just wanted to say thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to thank especially Case that is leading this challenge and brought this very interesting presentation for us today. We'll stay connected. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
afternoon. Melissa has put in the chat also the link where you can register to be part of the Biosphere. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.